لله ثم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن سيدنا وحبيبنا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. All praise is due to Allah, and after that all praise is due to Allah. We thank Him, we seek help from Him, we ask guidance in Him, and we seek forgiveness in Him from our own evils and from our own badness. Anyone who has been guided by Allah, they are indeed guided, and anyone who has been misguided by Allah, He will never find a guardian to guide them. I bear witness. I bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except for Allah, the only one without partner. And I bear witness that Muhammad is his servant and his messenger. To proceed forward. You know, it's very, very important for us as Muslims to always be viewing the world that's going on around us from the lens of Islam, and as opposed to from the lens of mankind or humankind, because their true reality is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and whatever we see from ourselves is only in passing. The true reality is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and whatever the Prophet has taught us to be able to view the world. So, to give you an example of what I'm talking about, let's suppose I told you that there was a powerful man. A powerful man. What would be the images that would come to your mind? Well, you could either have physical images, or you could have maybe some internal image. What would the physical images be? No doubt, they're going to be somebody who's big, who's tall, who's muscular, and you know, maybe even somebody who can wrestle another person, or you know, in fighting or something. He's the best of them all. So he's powerful. And then on another way, for the qualities of maybe a status, you might think of that person as somebody who's very rich, who's very influential, who can command other people. And those are the qualities that you think of when we think of somebody who is powerful. But that is a definition that's given by society. So now let's look at what is the definition of a powerful man given by our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, the powerful man is not the one who can wrestle. Right? So the first part of it is already destroyed. Whatever our image was in our mind of what a powerful man is has already been destroyed. So he says the powerful man is not the one who can wrestle, but the powerful man is the one who can control himself in times of anger. That is the definition of a powerful man. Again, the eyes of the dunya, our own eyes, or the eyes of the akhirah, the lens that we view our entire existence through the lens of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That is the distinction, that we have our own, but there's another ultimate reality that we have to be able to live and be able to respect. Similarly, when we are going about our everyday life, you know, it's very, very important for us to always have Islam on our mind, Iman in our hearts, and always be in a state of submission. What does that mean? Meaning that if you're doing something, whatever it is that you're doing, you should always be asking yourself, how can I make whatever I am doing beneficial for me in the hereafter, or beneficial in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this, right? In the Quran over and over again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَفَلَا تَفَكَّرُونَ? Don't you reflect? And so this is something that we always have to be able to do. Whatever is happening around us, we have to be constantly thinking. So for example, if you're driving, you have to notice the things that are around you, and you have to count the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Even the fact that you're sitting in a car, having the clothes that you're wearing, maybe sitting next to somebody that you love, all of these things are a blessing, and we have to count these blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. And then also, when we're traveling or doing other things, we have to look at Allah's creation, and we have to remember what it is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created. He says in the Quran, he says, الَّذِينَ يَذْكُرُونَ اللَّهَ قِيَامًا وَقُعُودًا وَعَلَى جُنُوبِهِمْ وتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقنا هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار. This is now a person who's always reflecting upon his state that's around him. When he's standing, when he's sitting, or when he's lying down. He's always in a state of reflection. He says in translation, men who celebrate the praises of Allah, standing, sitting, and lying down on their sides, and contemplate the wonders of creation in the heavens and the earth. تفكرون في الخلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا. Right? Yet, oh Lord, you did not create this in vain. You didn't create this for no reason. Subhanaka faqina adab an-nar. That you didn't create this, and great glory be to you. Give us salvation from the penalty of the fire. So again, this idea of constantly reflecting upon this. So, what am I getting to? Is that in the spirit of taking lessons from everything that's happening around us, this past weekend, my kids and I went and we saw a movie called Batman and Superman. And so I want to talk about the lessons that I took from this movie called Batman and Superman. You know, we've been waiting to watch this movie for a very, very long time. And so I promise that my future khutbahs will not only be about commentaries about movies that are coming out. Maybe some good ones down the road, but not all of them. So where do I begin? Okay, so you know, to me, if I'm going to be sitting in the movie theater and watching something for 3 hours and enjoying myself, again, going back to my earlier phrase, I want to be able to benefit from it. I want to be able to think and reflect upon it and say, how do I relate to whatever it is that's happening to making myself, increase myself in Iman, and increase myself in Islam. That's what I want to be able to do. And so that's what I did. And after the movie was over, I began to reflect upon it, and then I discussed it with my kids as well. And so I came up with 3 points that I want to be able to talk about in the movie. Spoiler alert, I'm going to try not to make any spoiler alerts, but you know, maybe close your ears if you think I'm about to say something that you don't want to hear. So we should have the discussion I had with my kids, and we talked about, you know, the different aspects of how the movie related to Islam, and I encourage everybody to be able to do that if you have kids as well, from its own perspective. Okay, number 1. Everybody knows the story of Superman as an individual, right? He's described in the comic books and movies and other things as the most powerful. He's more powerful than a locomotive, faster than a speeding bullet, and able to leap tall buildings in a single bound. So everybody knows exactly who Superman is. But we also know that although he's very, very powerful, he also has a weakness. And that weakness is kryptonite. Right? So basically it's the rock that's coming from Krypton. Those of you who don't know, I don't know why you wouldn't, but don't know about Superman, he comes from another planet called Krypton. You know, in there, there's kryptonite, and so if you have it on Earth, if he's around it, he's going to get weak. So that's his weakness, the one weakness that Superman actually has. And when he's around it, he loses all of his powers. He becomes like an ordinary human being. So the man of steel can begin to bleed, he hurts, and he can even die if he's around that kryptonite. So similarly, as human beings, as Muslims, we have our own kryptonite. And every single one of us knows exactly what that kryptonite is because it's different for different people. But we all have individually our own weaknesses that we know about and that we need to be aware of so that we can stay away from them. As Superman stays away from his kryptonite, we need to be able to stay away from our own as well. And as I mentioned, it's not the same for everybody. Some people their kryptonite might be really, really nice food. For other people, it might be really nice fast cars. For other people, basically, it's anything to do with the life of this world. So it's different for different people. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions this, right? He says to mankind, that you desire the adornments of this life. That's our weakness. So that's in the material thing. Some people don't have that. Either they've grown over it, or they just are not very material people. But there's other side of it as well, which is the inner part of it. When basically, like a person who, in the internal part of it, and then they might be absent-minded, they might be heedless, they might be stingy or hateful, they're jealous, all of those things, those can be our own kryptonite as well. So it doesn't have to be something external, it could be something that's internal as well. So the heedlessness or the absent-mindedness that you're going throughout your day, and then only afterwards you realize, oh wait, I just missed my Dhuhr prayer. Or oh wait, I just missed my Maghrib, or whatever. That's absent-mindedness. Heedlessness is a little bit more than that, which is purposely missing whatever it is that you're missing. But in the end of the day, what it does is that it destroys you, not only in this life, but also in the hereafter. And that is something that is a very, very serious thing. And it can make us very, very weak as Muslims. And so we have to be careful of something like that. And so Superman, he does whatever he can to be able to stay away and avoid kryptonite. Now, interestingly enough, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told Adam alayhi salam to in Jannah, to not eat from the tree, what he said was, "La taqrabu hadhihi ash-shajara." He said, don't even approach the tree. Forget about eating from it. So what we have to do is, in our own kryptonite that we have to not even approach that kryptonite. It's not a matter of being around it and only if we consume it that we grow weak. Just like Superman, he can't even be around it. Even if he gets close to it, he becomes weak. We have to realize that we're the same way. That if we get around, even close to the weaknesses that we have, then we are only there to be able to destroy ourselves. And so we have to stay away from it. La taqrabu hadhihi ash-shajara. Don't even come close to the tree. Don't even come close to that kryptonite. And so what does his arch nemesis, who is Superman's arch nemesis? Lex Luthor. So what is he trying to do? He's constantly trying to put him in a situation where he becomes weak. How? By putting him always around that kryptonite. And in the same way, we have our arch nemesis as well. Shaitan. And what Shaitan is trying to do is always trying to get us closer and closer to our own kryptonite. And he's not going to do it in a very, very blatant way. He's going to do it very subtly. And before you know it, you're there, you're weak, and you're going to die, and you're going to be ruining this life and the hereafter. And so that is something that we have to be careful of. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. So that was number one. Number two, in the movie Batman vs. Superman, there's a deep hatred that Batman has towards Superman. And they actually go to battle with each other. That's why the movie is called Batman vs. Superman. And it's a one-way hatred, right? It's not that Superman hates Batman. It's that Batman hates Superman. And I'm not going to get into the details of why, because that might give away some of the movies. So go watch it if you are so inclined. What happens is that eventually they become the best of friends. And that happens towards we already know this because you probably watch other cartoons as well. So that's not giving something away. So they become, after becoming the most worst of enemies, they become the best of friends. And it's a one-way, right? So Batman hates Superman. And as I was watching the movie and I began to reflect upon it, that this is something my son told me. When I asked him, what did you learn from this movie, or how can I use this for a funny way? He said, why don't you talk about the hatred that Batman had towards Superman? He said, how does that relate? He said, it reminds me of another thing in our seerah, which is the hatred that Umar ibn Khattab had for the Prophet ﷺ before he became Muslim. There was an absolute hatred. It was hatred for so much hatred that he was willing to kill the Prophet ﷺ, and that's what he was about to do. He basically was walking through the streets, going towards where the Prophet was, which is the Dar al-Arqam. And if it wasn't for one of the companions who came in and said, wait a minute, you should go take care of your own family first, which was his Umar's sister, Fatima, he would have actually gone into Dar al-Arqam and confronted the Prophet and possibly even killed him. So there was a deep hatred that was there. But once he became Muslim, there was love. And there was not only love, but they were fighting side by side in the enemies of Islam. Just like Batman and Superman began to fight side by side against the evils of the outer world. And so that is something that we have to be able to kind of look at from a relative perspective. That when Umar in Jahiliyyah hated the Prophet ﷺ so much, it was out of ignorance. The same way Batman was hating Superman out of ignorance. But when they finally realized what was going on, they became best of his friends, and side by side they fought again the evil. And again, the same way you can take the example of the Prophet ﷺ and Umar. They became the closest of friends, except only one person was closer to the Prophet ﷺ, and that was Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. but they fought side by side, as I mentioned. So the lesson here for us is that we should not hate anyone. We should actually hate the deeds that you do, but we should not hate anybody. And the reason why we don't hate anybody, because remember, hate is just as powerful as an emotion as love is. It's a complete opposite. So if you feel love for somebody, that powerful feeling that you have in your heart, that is what hate is towards us, that other person, but in the exact opposite. So we should not hate anyone, but we should hate what they are doing that's not in accordance with Islam. Why is that? Because it could be that tomorrow that person that you hate becomes a Muslim, then what are you going to do? Because hate is not something you can turn off overnight, just like love is not something you can turn off overnight. So it's not the feeling that you have towards a person, it's the deeds that they're doing that you actually hate, and that's in the sunnah of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In fact, he had concern for everyone. That is the reason why, when he came down from Taif, and even after they had stoned him and made him bleed and all those things, when the angel came down and he said, you know, I could destroy this, I could make the angel of the two mountains just destroy the entire city. He said, no, wait a minute, maybe in the future generations of these people will be the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So again, he had concern. He didn't hate the people. Obviously, he hated what they were doing, which was humiliating him. But there was no hatred to it, because if he really hated them, he would have told the angel, okay, you do it, because I hate these people. But that is something we have to always keep in mind. So whether it be anybody that's out there, and you can think of many examples of people we might rightfully think we want to hate. But again, we have to remind ourselves that we don't need to hate the person or the people, we need to hate whatever it is that they're doing. And we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He guides them to the straight path and He makes them Muslims. Oh Allah, make us love what you love, and make us realize that it is always good for us, whatever it is that you ask. Oh Allah, make our enemies Muslims and be the standard bearers of Islam. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. All praise be to Allah. First and blessing be upon His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So as I mentioned, it's important for us, as a reminder, just to be able to take lessons from and reflect upon everything that goes on in our lives. Whether it be you're driving a car, walking down the street, eating, talking, walking, whatever it is that you're doing, take it as an opportunity to be able to learn from it. Sometimes these things are as simple as intent. You say, you have an intent for something good, and that's perfectly fine. You say Bismillah, Alhamdulillah, Inshallah, Subhanallah, and that takes care of that part of it. But other times it's deeper than that, and we have to reflect upon the things that are happening over and over again around us. Even when it comes to the point of how do I benefit from it in this life, which is, I mean, everybody needs a relaxation sometimes. But also, how do I take that benefit from this life and also turn it into a benefit in the hereafter, which is the idea of that reflection on everything that is happening around us. And so you try to take it as much good of it as you can. So in summary, in the first khutbah, what we talked about was what we must realize is that each one of us has our own weakness. And we're always battling with that weakness. And hopefully it's only one. But even if it's more than one, focus on the most difficult one and focus on that one. But we have our own weaknesses, and we have to not only battle them, but we have to stay away from them. Because Shaitan constantly is going to be coming to us and be able to tempt us to come close to our own weaknesses. And that weakness, in similarity to Superman, is that kryptonite. Just as Lex Luthor is trying to get kryptonite in front of Superman as quickly as possible, but in very, very subtle ways, the same way, Shaitan is very, very conniving, and he's going to do anything that he can to be able to get your kryptonite in front of you as slowly or as quickly as possible. He has all the time in the world. He has from the, since he was exiled from Jannah all the way until the day of judgment. That's a long time. He's going to outlast us outwit us and do everything if it wasn't for the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's the first one. The second thing is that the worst of our enemies can become our best friends. And we have to take this into reality. We have to take this as a reality, because it's happened many, many times during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, when his worst enemies became his best friends. And I gave just one example of Umar al-Khattab, who hated the Prophet in Jahiliyyah, but when he came into Islam, remember the hadith I gave a couple of weeks ago, that the Prophet ﷺ asked Umar, he said, Umar, what do you love the most in this world? And he said, I love everything. I love you, the Prophet ﷺ, more than anything except for myself. He was honest. He said, I love myself more than I do. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, you will not attain true faith until you love me more than you love yourself. And so Umar went, he thought about it, came back, and he said, now I love you, Ya Rasulullah, more than I love myself. So this person who was hating the Prophet ﷺ now was loving him more than he loved himself. Imagine that transformation. So ourselves is the same way, that when we hate people, they might be the same people that tomorrow we actually grow to love. And so we don't hate their being, we hate the actions that they actually perform. So that was number 2. Number 3, and finally, and this was a very, very small part, but it actually has a very, very deep meaning. There was another character, amongst many other ones, that was introduced in this movie. And that was the character of Wonder Woman. What we know of her from the film, and just talking about the film itself, what we know of her from the film is that she has been in hiding ever since World War II. And then she finally comes out. And when Batman, when he asks her why she's been in hiding, she responds that she actually lost hope in mankind. After World War II, after all the destruction, after all the killings, after all the warfare, she lost hope and she basically gave up trying to help mankind do whatever it is, help mankind fight evil, and because of all the destruction. Now, but finally she does come out and actually helps Batman Superman defeat the evil that comes about in the movie. And she does this because she says that hope has been restored in her for mankind. Now this is a very, very important aspect I want you to keep in mind, and that is that we should never lose hope in anybody. Because that losing the hope, if you lose hope in mankind, that means you're losing hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "La taqnatu min rahmatillah." Do not despair the mercy of Allah. And it is only through mercy that mankind gets saved. So if we don't have hope in mankind, we're despairing the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we have to keep in mind is that always, no matter how much good you've done, and how much good you're going to do, and how much evil continues to come out of whatever good it is that you're doing, we should never lose hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is the lesson from our beloved Messenger himself. He was exiled from his home city of Mecca. He was humiliated in Taif. He was constantly fighting battles with the Quraysh and then with others. People were constantly trying to kill him, assassinate him. All these things, he had an ample opportunity to be able to lose hope in the Arabs that were living during his time. But he didn't, because of this reason. And even Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds him and Abu Bakr when they were traveling, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "La tahzan, inna Allah ma'ana." He says, do not be sad, because Allah is with us. This is now the Prophet ﷺ telling Abu Bakr the reality of the situation. He's telling the reality. So for us as a lesson from even the third part of it is that we should never lose hope in mankind. And there's a lot of different things that are going on, from terrorism to hijackings to kidnappings to torture, mass killings. All of these different things, it's very, very easy for us to lose hope. And a lot of times it's happening against ours, it's happening against us by our own brothers, if you can call them. By our own brothers, let's say Shahada, so let's just assume they're brother. It's happening against us by our own community. This is happening. And so it's very, very easy for us to lose hope. That's like somebody like your mother, your father, your wife, your children coming and backstabbing you. You're going to have that opportunity to be able to lose hope. It hurts when something like this happens. But again, if we begin to lose hope, then shaitan is winning over us. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله. Do not despair the mercy of Allah. All of this compels us to believe that no matter how bad things get, no matter how many times evil people blow themselves up and kill innocent people in Pakistan, in Turkey, in Mali, in Africa, in Arabia, wherever it is in the world, whenever evil people do that in the West, we have to realize that there is going to be a better tomorrow. There is going to be a better tomorrow. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His promise is true. Inna wa'dallahi haqq. Right? That Allah's promise is always true. And that promise is that victory will be given to Islam. That victory will be given to the Muslims. It is not on our time. We are only in this world for a very, very short period of time. The victory is given in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's time. He will be the one to decide what we have to do. Our responsibility is to keep hope alive and to keep doing whatever it is doing that is towards good and away from evil. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا. ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به. واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. اللهم إنك عفو تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكيها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين